Hello, welcome to Moxie Journal. My name is Calix. I also go by Moxie. I use she, her pronouns. I'm so glad you're here with me today. I am here to film a walkthrough, flip through, review, chat about the Dune Bene Gesserit Tarot. It is a newish deck I'm filming here in February of 2026. I think the deck has been out for about a month here in the US. And I do want to kind of right from the outset tell you that this is not going to be an unbiased or silent review and flip through. I am a fan. I love the books. I love the two movies that this is based on. This deck is specifically based on the two recent movies. They're part one and part two of Dune. There's a third one coming out that's going to be called Dune Messiah, as I understand it. And this is the film that is directed by Denis Villeneuve, and who stars Timothy Chalamet and Zendaya, has an amazing cast, Jason Momoa and Christopher Walken, and Francis Pugh, and many other really talented actors. So it is an epic story, but I do want to say, I'm going to try and explain why I think the bigness in this sort of mythic hero's journey of this story was perfectly mapped into the tarot story, somewhat the way Greek myths or Norse myths can be mapped in. So even if you don't, already know all that much about Dune, I'm going to argue that this deck just works. It works really well. So if you're at all drawn to the art style or interested in a little bit of Dune, totally fine. Stick around and just help me explore, see if it would be for you. Now, I do want to tell you, I'm not trying to convert anyone. If you don't love Dune, you don't have to. I'm not trying to convince you to buy the deck. I have no dog in that fight. I'm not affiliated or sponsored with anybody. I did buy this deck with my own money. It's a mass market deck. I think it's quite affordable. I think it was under $30, maybe even like 27 or 28 US, and it is widely available. So I am going to, I mentioned that it's not a silent walkthrough, right? I'm actually going to chat a little bit as I go along. If you've been with me before, you will know some of that chat, I might interrupt myself. I might get a little distracted. And so if you've been with me before, thank you for coming back. And if you're new to me, just know that I do have a little list over here on the right of things that I want to cover and make sure I tell you about. But it may be just a little bit, it may go in a few circles. If you are interested in more of just a silent art flip through, then I'm linking actually two videos in the description. One by Cosmic Orphan. He did a beautiful walkthrough. He's got music as the cards are just shown, and then he does talk about the guidebook, but he doesn't talk about the cards. He just shows them to you. If that's what you're interested in, I highly recommend him. And if you want a little bit of chat, but not necessarily the input from a fan who's going to tell you more about the story, then I am going to link Marilyn's take on it. She did a lovely walkthrough with some chat. She talks about, even though she doesn't know all the ins and outs of the story, what kind of intuitive hits and how this deck works for her, if you're interested. All right, so that said, I think I did tell you I'm not trying to convince you or anything, and I will talk about cardstock, right? So I'm going to do a full deck walkthrough. I'll talk about the cardstock. I'll show you how it compares to regular size tarot. I will talk about how it shuffles at the end. Actually, I'm going to shuffle it, and I'm going to do some pairings that I have tried out. I have been working with this deck for a few weeks now, and so I will put timestamps in case you want to jump around or jump to that. All right, so let's see. What else do I need to say? I think that's that. This deck was written by Minerva Siegel and illustrated by Sarah Rain Hammond. I think it is an Insight Editions deck, And I think Minerva Siegel did a fantastic job of choosing characters and scenes from the story arc that is the Dune movies and mapping them into the tarot story that we know and love. It is the Rider-Waite-Smith system of meanings and story trajectory. And the guidebook in here, let me just tell you, I should show you the box. So it's a pretty sturdy box. It's not, as you can see, it's just sort of, you know, about the size of my hand and thick. It's not a great big box. Like, I mean, this is not a huge box, but this is my dark side of tarot. It's a Los Scarabeo deck. So you can see the difference in this sort of box size. And then let's get it out. It's got a clamshell opening with a magnetic closure. Now my book, if you don't have all the tabs and stuff, it fits in a little bit nicer. Mine, I've got all these little pieces of paper, and I have been working with, have some things flagged. And then we have the nice ribbon. And I'll put this over here. Oh, it's got some nice spot glossing on the front, if you can see that. Oh, I should maybe, if you're interested in reading the back, here's the back. You can look at that. And these are the cards. They have this fully reversible back. And this, the imagery here on the back is a reference to the story of Dune. Dune is a planet called Arrakis, also known as Dune. It is a desert planet inhabited by these giant sandworms, and it is the only place in the story's universe where you can mine spice, which is a substance found deep in the desert that is like a hallucinogenic, mind-opening, mind-expanding substance that allows the navigators for the interstellar ships of this galactic empire. It allows them to navigate the cosmos. So here we have the, you know, the representation of the cosmos. Without this substance, no galactic travel can happen. So this substance is controlled and exploited by the empire. We have an emperor, we have great houses. We have two great houses, the House of Atreides and the House of Harkonnen. And if you don't want spoilers, if you haven't seen the movies, then I can't promise I won't give spoilers. I'm going to tell you some things about the way this story goes, just to sort of show you how the myth translates into the cards. So I think I said they're reversible. The color palette is this mostly muted. There are some blues, especially when we get to the water. One of the side effects of ingesting or being around spice is that it makes your eyes sort of glow this bright blue to kind of indicate the changes it's ringing on your system. But you can see it's a fairly muted color palette. The card finish is, I heard someone describe it as rose petal, so I'm going to assume that they were right. However, it's not quite as grabby as I think of it as rose petal being. It is smooth to the touch. The cardstock is, it's not super bendy. It's not super thick, but it is thicker than, say, who do I have over here? I have, this is the dark side of tarot. And, oh, actually, I'll show you this size. The Dune is just slightly wider, about the same height, but slightly wider. The cardstock is a little bigger. Actually, let me show you. I'll show you the whole deck compared to the whole deck over here, so you can see the difference in the thickness. So it's just a little bit thicker than my Los Scarabeo deck. It is matte finish, so it's not glossy, it's not shiny, and it's, I guess, rose petal, but it doesn't stick. Now, it also doesn't fan super well, right? So there you go. However, I'll show you shuffling at the end, but I really like working with it. For me, sometimes with rose petal, when I'm trying to grab the cards, they're too sticky like that, and so I don't find these to be super sticky. Okay, and that's sort of all I know about cardstock. I have used this a lot. I do shuffle it. I'm not a super great shuffler though, as you'll see in a few minutes. And it's not bowed. It also doesn't have any, edging. There's no gilt or anything. It's just the plain cardstock. All right, let me come down here and we'll do a flip through. Oh, nope. Before we do that, Calyx. It's a good thing I have a checklist. Let's talk about the guidebook. So as I said, it's written by Minerva Siegel and the illustrator is Sarah Hammond. I think Minerva Siegel did a fantastic job. She's done at least, I think she's done a few other Inside Editions deck, but I particularly like the Supernatural deck that she did, and now the Dune is actually just my favorite one that she's done. All right, so it gives you the contents. It's a paper, like a smooth paper, not glossy paper guidebook, and it is from the perspective of the Bene Gesserit in this saga. The Bene Gesserit is a group of women. They're sometimes referred to as the Bene Gesserit witches. They've developed powers through the centuries. They work to bring about through the centuries. They're trying to connect bloodlines. They're influencing the leaders of all the different houses and the empire, all through the empire. They are working kind of behind the scenes to bring about their prophesied leader, the Kwisatz Haderach. They have some superhuman powers that they've developed. They remember their whole lineage. They remember all, with the Reverend Mothers, remember all the information from the Reverend Mothers from centuries before them. So it's a really kind of fascinating group. And the fact that the way that Minerva Siegel wrote the book this is like the Bene Gesserit guide, and so it kind of talks about that, about you coming into it through the Bene Gesserit and the people who have sort of these other mind powers. So but through that lens, it does tell you some basic information. If you've never read tarot, like how it works, how to take care of your deck. It does for both beginners and longtime tarot readers. It gives you an orientation to the suits, which are a little bit renamed. They have the suit of spice, which is associated with travel, inspiration, motivations. We know it as wands, and it corresponds to the element of fire. The suit of water, representing romance, interpersonal connections, and emotion. It corresponds to the element of water. We also know it as cups, and particularly in a desert planet with no water, water assumes this significance and connection. So it's just beautifully done there. The suit of Crysknives is associated with power, conflicts and intellect. The element of air, we know it as the suit of swords and other tarot. And then the suit of planets, representing domestic affairs, careers, finances, physical realm, the element of earth, and Pentacles. Oh, I wanted to say Crysknives in the story. Crysknives are ceremonial and sharp. They're used in ritual, conflict, and combat, but they are carved from the tooth of the giant sandworm, the Shai Halud. So they are used in all the battle scenes in the movie. There are Crysknives involved. So I think those are just really well done. They do explain about the court cards, page, knight, queen, and king. And then we have the remaining minor arcana, ace through 10. So it talks about that. And then it goes into the major arcana first. We have a full color, full page picture. There is some information about what the Fool means, and the association in the artwork, and then an upright and a reversed meaning. Then when we get to the my little flags are coming out. When we get to the suits here in the courts, each one just has one page with a smaller but still full color picture with the character or scene. And even though it doesn't have a place up at the top like it did for the major, it does actually tell you who the character is and tells you, kind of weaves into the meaning why that card has that character on it. And then we get sort of the same treatment for the ace through the 10 about who the characters are and what the upright and the reversed meanings are. If I didn't already say, the meanings are aligned with the Rider-Waite-Smith system. And then at the end, I think they do a great job. They give you a few readings. So they tell you how to take care of your deck and how to prepare to read. So some kind of good anchoring points. But then they have 3 different spreads. Here's the Crysknives Haderach, and then one for Chani's Grief. So I love it when decks have particular spreads. I like to do them. I thought they were good spreads. All right, so that's the guidebook, and I've talked about cardstock. And I don't think I've forgotten anything else. I'm looking at my list over here. I don't know that I got to the point where I talked about all of the lore and the epic scale of this story, but I do love the way it blends the story, the saga, this hero's journey in this epic scale across planets and with these big political intrigues with these 2 great houses, the House Atreides and the House Harkonnen, and the Emperor who's kind of trying to keep balance, but also a little bit stagnant in his rule. And then we have the Bene Gesserit witches who are manipulating for their own agendas, right? So we have conflicting political agendas, and against this big interstellar conflict and, you know, these giant themes of exploitation and community and sacrifice and conflict, we have prophecies and we have magic, but then we also have these real specific yet universal struggles, individual people who are wrestling with family and falling in love and being fearful and longing, being thrust into a whole new environment, being forced to move to an entirely different planet, completely alien from anything they've ever known, and having to step into roles that are expected of them and making hard decisions and figuring out who to trust and having some conflicts and emerging victorious only to then turn around and have more hurdles, right? Life be lifing. So I just, again, I'm not trying to sell you on it, but if you've ever enjoyed a classic mythic deck, like I have the Odyssean, I have the Circe, and I loved them, and I had to sort of read the guidebook to remind myself about some of those myths, and the Norse myths I barely remembered. So the runic decks, it all brought me in. So I would argue that this deck could do the same for you if you wanted to. All right, so I'm just sharing my love of myth and story in this particular deck. So here we go. I'll finally get to the cards. Whew, this many minutes in. All right, this is the Fool, and I am going to tell you a little story. This, I think, is probably one of the most perfect Fool cards of any tarot I've ever seen. Now, I get that it looks like just a little mouse with big ears here in the desert. He doesn't have his little pack or his little, you know, some of the imagery that we care about. But this is this tiny desert mouse who is actually really well designed for the desert that he navigates in. He's kind of a comic character, and with his ears that flap, and he, you know, kind of washes his little face, and so he just jumps into the desert and starts the story, right? So you can see him that way. This mouse is also called Muad'Dib, which we'll see as Paul, our hero, the young man who has to go from his watery world of Caladan and step into being the duke's son of this giant house in these big imperial intrigues. And he lands on this planet that he's been kind of mysteriously dreaming and thinking about and studying. And he adapts to the desert. He gets pulled into this story, and he meets these characters, right, through this story. And at the end, right, our Fool is 0, but also could be like the card 22, because it's the beginning and the end, right, comes full circle. And Paul, as he steps through this mythic hero's journey, he actually takes on the name of Muad'Dib. And people laugh at him at first, like, oh, that tiny little desert mouse, and here you're supposed to be some great messiah leader. And yet his mentor actually says, no, no, this is a wise choice. Muad'Dib, he knows, right? He's humble, and yet he's also, he goes to the desert. So anyway, I think it's a really powerful, wonderful choice for the Fool. So there's the Fool, and I won't tell you that much story about all of them. Here we have the Magician with the spice. So this sand with the glitter in it is spice. That's that substance, that it's a mind expanding substance. So the Magician, it's kind of how he brings things to be. The High Priestess is the Reverend Mother, the Helen Mohim, I think is her name, the Reverend Mother of all the Bene Gesserit. We do have some repeat characters. This is the first time we see Lady Jessica. She's the Empress. She is the Duke's concubine. She is our hero Paul's mother, and she is a Bene Gesserit herself. And we see her several times in the deck. We see Paul several times in the deck. And I have seen that kind of thing in other fan decks about, a movie or a series, and sometimes I find it a little irritating because I think they could have used another character, they could have broadened it. But I think in this particular deck, Minerva Siegel does a great job of repeating only when this character is at a different stage in the story, in their development, in their moving through the whole process. And so it's not a lazy, it's a very intentional repetition, and I think it's beautifully done. All right, here she is as the Empress. And then here is the Emperor. Now, in this case, the Emperor and the Empress are not a couple. Lady Jessica is a Bene Gesserit. She's way over here, but this is the Emperor. And I think this Emperor is a perfect choice. He is the embodiment of the upright and the reversed meanings, right? He's been leading for a long time. There's stability in this giant galactic universe, and there are these houses that are constantly, the great houses are always trying to get power over each other, and so he has led them. But also there's some stagnation that's coming about in his rule, and some questions about his use of authority. So, and he's played by Christopher Walken. It's just amazing. We have the Hierophant. This is a character named Stilgar. When Paul comes to the planet Arrakis, also known as Dune, Stilgar is one of the Fremen, one of the natives who work with the desert, in harmony of the desert, and he mentors Paul in the ways of the desert, of the ways of Dune. He's also one of the first to believe that Paul is the Messiah that has been prophesied, and so he's kind of connected to some of that religious teaching. We have the Lovers. These are our Chani. She's a Fremen woman, and Paul Atreides, who comes to Dune. And again, with the upright and the reversal. Upright, they're a healthy, beautiful couple, and then reversed, they have some struggles. There are some decisions. There are some things that happen, choices that they make that cause some friction, problems. We have the Chariot. This is, if you have not seen, there are these giant sandworms, the Shai Halut, and this is what they look like. They have the big circles, and they travel through the desert. And this little figure up here, I don't know if you can really see it, but that is one of the Fremen riding atop this massive dune. This massive sandworm Shai Halut. This is one, this one is another one, and this is another one. Those aren't eyes and a mouth. That's just one right there. So that's one chariot, and these are other ones. The Strength card, this is a character named Duncan Idaho, played by Jason Momoa. I really do promise I'm not going to tell you all the story about all of them, but one of the things that I love where they chose Duncan Idaho as this character to represent strength is Duncan Idaho. He is physically strong. He's Jason Momoa. He's played by this just giant human, and he's a warrior. He is in the service of the House Atreides. he is loyal and strong in that way. And also, he is sent to the planet Arrakis Dune to make friends, to understand the ways to work in harmony with the Fremen. The previous house that had been in charge of Arrakis trying to extract the spice was the Harkonnens, and the Harkonnens, their approach was to just oppress and extract and exploit. They would just exterminate the Fremen who got in their way. There was no working to be in harmony or to understand the Fremen way of life or their claims on the planet. So I love that even though you don't see the Fremen in this picture, that's the relationship that Duncan, Idaho is sent to build. And I love that mirroring of the strength of a different way of approach. It's not just physical oppression. And then we have the Hermit card. I love this. This is a character named Dr. Leah Kynes. And one of the things I love about it is in the book, this was a male character, and in the movies, it's female. And she is outside of the community and yet also a part of it. She is a edge walker between the worlds. We have the Wheel of Fortune. We have Lady Jessica and Paul encountering Sandworm Shai-Hulud for the first time on this encounter. And I think this is a really good Wheel of Fortune. Things can change unexpectedly. We have the Justice card. This is the house of the Atreides house signet. The Hanged Man. Paul has just had an experience with the spice, and he got paralyzed by this mind-opening experience just as they were saving the crew from a harvester that was harvesting spice. Anytime spice is harvested, the sandworms always come. So the fact that the harvester got stuck and couldn't move, Paul and his crew had gone to rescue it, and then Paul got overwhelmed by the spice in the air. And so his perspective has changed because he had this mind-expanding experience. And also, this is really his first time of seeing the sandworms come up, seeing how they move, seeing how they open, seeing the desert. And then he is also literally hanging, he's suspended above it in this ornithopter. And so, again, works on so many levels. This is the Death card. It's transformation. So in this case, Paul appears to be dead, but in fact, he's in the middle of a transformation, and he is. And then we have Temperance. This is our Chani. She is our lover. She is Paul's love in the Fremen. The Devil card. This is the Baron Harkonnen. He's a very scary, oppressive, horrible, monstrous figure, and his way is to control, to manipulate, to coerce, and to terrify people. The Tower card. This is a beautiful depiction of a tower card in that this is the Imperial tent, and it is in the middle of being destroyed by an atomic attack. So as the empire falls, what comes next? And the answer is Paul Atreides, the hope, the star, the Messiah that's been prophesied, maybe, as he is reluctant to step into that role, and yet he is the hope for these people. We have the Moon card. This is a little bit of a darker interpretation of a Moon card. This is Dr. Yue, and he is a complicated figure. He is both a loyal member of the House Atreides. He has also been compromised, and he is a betrayer. And so he is both things at once. He has a lot that is hidden, that is only revealed at some really difficult times. So it's an interesting read on the Moon. The Sun card, think, what is this? But this is Paul when he first calls Shai-Hulud, and he calls the largest sandworm that's ever been seen out of the desert. And so the idea here is that the sun that brings back this vitality is all in this experience here where he rides the Shai-Hulud for the first time. We have the Judgment card. Oh, this is the Reverend Mother. She is challenging Paul. She has a needle up to his neck, which is called the Gom Jabor, and then he has his hand, you can't really see, it's in this box, and to him it feels like his hand is being burned off, but she's testing whether he can control his animal impulses. The Bene Gesserit have been a part of bringing these powerful people into positions, but they test them to make sure that the people who have been gifted this inheritance of these powers, that they have the control to be good leaders. And it's a very interesting test. I think it's a really interesting Judgment card. It is an awakening to see, to test, to give the opportunity to see if you can pass. And then we have the World card. This is the end of the cycle, and in this particular scene we have the old emperor whose regime has collapsed. He is bowing, he is kissing the ring of Paul. So I think it's a beautiful end of the big cycle. All right, so those are the major arcana, and then here we have this the minor, and this is the ace. Again, this is the spice. This guy's name is Thufir. He's a Mentat. Thufir Hawat, I think is his last name. That's why his eyes look weird, because he's a Mentat. And I love the way they indicate, it says 2 of spice at the bottom, but you also see these 2 streams of spice. We have the 3 of spice. This is when the Atreides first arrives, that idea of travel, of things changing. Here's Lady Jessica. This is the Duke. And this is their retainers. We have the 4 of spice. This is a character named Fade Rotha. You can see it's more black and white. This is indicates in the deck that he is part of the Harkonnens. As we saw the Baron, the Devil card, this is his uncle, and Fade is a member of that house. This is the 5. This is the harvester of the spice. Then we have the 6. We have this is the nephew and his monstrous uncle in a really interesting way there. Oh, this is a hunter killer. This 7 of spice I think is fascinating. This is a little machine that was left behind. It's an assassin sort of machine that tries to take out Paul, and Paul manages to meet this test by being still and then moving and then directing it. Like it's brilliant. The 8 of spice, this is Paul and Jessica as watching as their city burns, as the Empire has betrayed them, and they have just barely escaped with their lives, and they are having to go move. They have had to move to get out to be there. And then the 9 of spice, this is a man named Lanville, who is a retainer for the Atreides, but he's been captured by the Harkonnens, and he is fighting. He is loyal and strong, and this is this test of him. He must fight. And then the 10, Paul is taking on this burden of leadership. He is stepping into this big role, this web of expectations. This is kind of going back in the story when he's watching and learning. He's on his home planet, and this is right when he's first even learning about the fact that he's going to go to the planet Dune. This is a Gurney Halleck. He is the knight for the House Atreides. This is Lady Jessica. And then here is the Duke. So these are all House Atreides and the leaders. This is a really interesting character, the Ace of Water. In this case, that bright glowing blue is an artifact of taking spice, so it turns the eyes blue. And this little baby, this is Paul's little sister. She has a very interesting story. She gets exposed to spice while she is still in in utero, in before she's born. And so she is exposed to this mind-altering substance, which connects her in time to all the Reverend Mothers through all of time. So she's a very interesting character. The Two of Water, we have Chani is teaching Paul how to walk. He has to move in the desert. You can't just stomp because you'll call the worms. So this is a partnership, a friendship, in addition to the big love story that they have. This is Chani and a friend of hers, and they are sort of looking at the other Fremen. They are Fedaykin, I think is how they say it, warriors. I love this connection. They're always kind of doing some play. Paul, Four of Water, he is struggling. He can't see some of his options. He's in it. And then we have him facing away. This is nostalgia. This is a memory. The Seven of Water. I actually love this. This is this herald. He's the herald of change. He is coming to, he's the one that is sent by the emperor with the order to take over the planet Arrakis, take over spice production. But they have a whole line, when is a gift not a gift, right? So you have the Seven of Cups, the Seven of Water here, and they have this, this powerful position and this taking over the spice, which is just unimaginable wealth. But then what are the hidden pieces to this? It's really well done. So the Eight of Water, the Nine of Water. I really am going to try not to tell you all the stories, but this is Stilgar. Remember, he's the Hierophant. He's also here in this Nine of Cups. He is realizing this moment, this wish come true. He has wanted to witness the coming of the Lisan al-Gaib, and he's the first to recognize that Paul is that prophesied Messiah, or the first, maybe one of the first to believe. So this is this wish come true as he opens to it. And then the Ten of Water, we have these are the Fremen. These are all the great sandworms. The Page of Water, this is the Sand Keeper. This is a tiny baby, sort of imprisoned sandworm, and this is the page. This is the character called I think it's the Maker Keeper, maybe. The Knight of Water is the Duke, right? He is in love with Lady Jessica. He is charming. He is wonderful. He is devoted. And this is Lady Jessica again, but in this case, this is after she has embraced. She has gone, she's had to leave her home. She has been thrust out. She has gone to the Fremen, and she has taken the water of life, and she has stepped into the powers of a Reverend Mother of the Bene Gesserit for the Fremen. So she is the queen of the water there. And then we have Paul stepping in as the king. All right, I'm going to go a little faster. The Crysknives, this is the suit of intellect. The Two, he has a terrible choice. This is Beast Raban. He's the Harkonnen nephew. He's played by Dave Bautista. He's brilliant. And he is having to either die or kiss his brother's shoe and acknowledge him as the ruler. So difficult choices. This is interesting. Three of Swords, Three of Crysknives. These are Harkonnen hangers on. They are not treated well. And this respite before more battle, they actually have a little bit of a dalliance there. This is an incredible battle here, this 5. This is Duncan, who is really fighting to give Paul and Chani a chance to escape. This is where Paul becomes one of the Fremen, by engaging in this combat. So the 6, that recognition, that victory, he defeats Jamis in this true battle. And Jamis is an experience. He's one of the best fighters. In fact, no one here gives Paul any chance at winning. They're just giving him a chance to die with honor. And he ends up being triumphant and being recognized. That's his entry into the Fremen. All right, so I'm going to be a little quiet and just show you some of these pictures. The guidebook does a good job, I think, with this one. This 9 of... Okay, I just said I would not tell you the story, but I'm going to tell you a little bit of the story because this is beautiful lore here. This is Lady Jessica, where her son Paul is being tested with that gum jabbar to his throat with the Reverend Mother, and she's terrified for her son, and she stands outside this door and she repeats this litany against fear, and it is, I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings a total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And when it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. Where the fear has gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain. This litany of fear, if you've ever heard anything about Dune, you've heard that litany, right? It is, I mean, my partner told me that recently she heard that Kathy Bates was interviewed, and when they asked Kathy Bates what she did when she got nervous or got stage fright, she said that she repeated this litany against fear, which I just think is brilliant. I'm going to put them in the description below, but there are 2 articles that I think are really interesting. One is called Anxiety in Pop Culture, What Dune's Litany Against Fear Gets Wrong and Right About Anxiety. And there's a follow-up to that, part 2, and it says Fear is Not the Mind Killer. So I'll link both of those. I just thought they were interesting articles. So, all right, then we have the 10. We have the page. Again, this is a different stage. This is the Knight of Crysknives. He is an interesting Harkonnen character. This is the Queen of Crysknives. We saw her in that 4 of Swords earlier. She is sent to Feyd-Rautha. And then this is Feyd-Rautha right before combat. And he is the King of Crysknives, the King of Air makes sense there. Then we start with our planets, which are the same as Pentacles. And this is the first time Paul is let in to be here on a strategy session. So it's the beginning of his stepping into that kind of role. Decisions. These are the Sardaukar. They are the legions and legions of imperial fighters. So this is in concert with how the emperor rules. He doesn't just rule just because he's an individual person. He rules in conjunction with these forces. 4 of planets. We saw Dr. Yue in the Moon card. Here he is in this card of desperation and misery. He is in a just completely untenable situation. And this is one of my favorite cards in the whole deck. This is the 6 of planets, the 6 of Pentacles, which is a card of reciprocity. And here we have the Duke, we have Duncan, Idaho, and we have Stilgar. So Duncan, Idaho has been sent ahead to the Fremen. He's learned some of their ways. This is the first time when the Duke has landed on the planet. And his goal, remember, is to be in harmony, to work with the Fremen. The Fremen are not known to being hospitable to outsiders. So it's a big deal that Duncan was able to convince Stilgar to come meet with the Duke, and then Stilgar shows up, and in the greeting, Stilgar spits right here, spits at the Duke, and everybody launches for their knives. They're about to attack Stilgar, but Duncan jumps in and says, "Hold." And then he demonstrates, he spits too, and he says, "Stilgar, we thank you for your gift of water and for that respect. We honor that and we pledge to work with you." And then Duke Leto realizes what's going on, realizing that that wasn't a mark of disrespect. It was in fact a mark of incredible respect from this culture, and he spits as well. So that reciprocity, that being willing to exchange, I just think it's beautiful. All right, then we have the 9. Oops. Then we have the 7, the 8, the 9, the 10. This is the Emperor and his daughter. And then The page is represented by the daughter. She's played by Florence Pugh. She's the Princess Irulan, followed by Bene Gesserit. The knight, this is the head of the Sardaukar, those imperial legions. And then the queen here, and then the king of the planets. So those are all the cards, and I really did refrain from telling you all of the stories, even though I told you quite a few of them. So let's go ahead and we'll shuffle, and I'll just show you some pairs. I appreciate it if you have stuck with me this far. As you can see, I don't shuffle the whole deck at once. I shuffle part of it, and then I split it, and then, oops. Oh, that was a terrible shuffle. I usually do better. I probably took just a few too many cards. Because when I have the right number, I do it really well. Well, actually, I don't do shuffling really well. But these do slide against each other pretty well. They don't grab. I'm not very good at the overhand shuffling because I tend to... Also, I have to look there and not at the camera. And even after that shuffling, you can see they're pretty straight. They're not bowed. If I do overhand, again, these are a little... I guess they're a little grabby, but they're not as grabby as my other rose petal. My other rose petal cards, they would just be complete chunks. I wouldn't even be able to get a few of them to slide. All right, so that's enough for demonstration purposes. Let's go ahead, we'll split the deck, and I'll show you some of the pairings that I did. So here's the first one, and I'm going to tell you, I'm going to start with the one that I think was sort of the least successful, and I'll work up to the one that I thought was the most successful. And so the least successful, and it may work for you, so I thought I would just show it. I thought, I was thinking about this sort of desert motif, and I thought, well, what about this other lore that we have that comes out of, a human desert culture, which is Egypt, right? So I picked the Egyptian Sacred Animals deck. There, it's an oracle deck. They're pretty big. Now, I will tell you about this, that, shuffle it, is that these cards, they just have the name of the animal here. They don't have keywords, so we'd need to look up what the crocodile represents. We'll do that just for one so you can kind of see it, and then I'll just let you look at the artwork. Maybe I will and maybe I won't if I can find the... Oh, number 11. There we go. Number 11. The crocodile. Right? This is prosperity, power, the god Sobek. And you can read a little bit more if you want. And then here we have the Nine of Spice and the King of Planets, right? This is actually the Emperor. So we have that burden. We have this... his name is Lanville, right? He's a last, he's a prisoner, and he's fighting in the arena. So he has this, he has to fight through it. And then we have this crocodile who's associated with water and fertility, connected to the power of the pharaoh and military dominance. So it worked pretty well thematically. I'll just do a few more so you can see visually how the cards worked. Right, so we have a bee with the Knight of Water and the Chariot. I actually think that one's pretty cool. I think the color palette works pretty well because, again, we have this sort of papyrus with some blues. We have some black and whites. And then thematically, I think the Oracle worked pretty well. Actually, it works a little bit better than I did when I was just playing with it on myself. I think that was a little bit better reading with that crocodile. So that's one option. And then, because I love pairing things with this Coastal Curiosities, I thought this one, there were some cards that I thought this one worked. This is Coastal Curiosities by Lennox Reese. And I have the pocket edition. There is a full size, and I have the one that has different colors. with it. So, you know, some of them are sort of greens and purples. I don't think those are as successful visually, but all of the ones that, you know, that are sort of the sort of earthier gold colors here, I think end up working. All right, so this does, right, this has keywords on it. Am I in camera here? Okay, let's make sure everybody can see everything. Right, so we have this being imprisoned by your thoughts. And then we have established, we have this key, and then we have that strength card to resolve it. I think that works pretty well. Let's try a few more. The 10 of water, withdraw, but then we have the 5 of spice, wands. Temperance, a retreat, and then the hermit. Oh, I think that is a really interesting, I could totally journal on that with the 2 here. So I had several powerful pairings readings with this particular pair. And again, some cards didn't hit at all, but when they did hit it, and particularly for me, the purples and the blues were okay, but the purples and sort of the, I don't know, that colorway, which are some of my favorite colors, they didn't visually kind of work with the deck, even if the theme of the card did. So so that one was pretty good. As I said, I got some really powerful readings. And then my third deck, my third pairing that I think paired really well is the Arcana of Astrology by Claire Goodchild. And this one, these are the backs. And these are this is an astrological one. So they're just these circles with the sort of star map and colors, the planets, the, what are those called? Asteroids, the moon phases. So, and I think the colorway works really well. Let's turn to new cards. Oh. So visually it works. And then also, again, if you are an astrology buff, you are probably really good with this. I don't know quite as much. One of the reasons I have this deck is because I want to learn. But then, this is the new moon, so it should be over here. So, right, if you don't already know the associations, this book is beautiful, right? Represents the starting point. Think of it as a blank page where you control the story. And then we have this story that plays out here. So let me do some more. And again, like Aquarius, when you get to the, oops, I might even need to back up. But you can see you get what the astrology means and a reading, and you know, like what it looks like in a reading. Oops, sorry. I'll do just a few more so you can see. Wow, that one I think is really powerful, again with this nightmare and anxiety. And then we have the knight here. He's an interesting character with Eris right there. So anyway, this video is getting long. I wanted to just show you a little bit about how I have worked with this. I really like the spreads that are in the back of the Dune book. I think they are interesting. I love the story, so for me it really speaks. But I think even if you only knew a little bit about the story, the guidebook gives you a lot. And it has, because they took such care aligning the stories, the images with the story of the myth and mapping it really specifically and well to tarot. I think it works even if you don't remember all the details of the tarot. That's my, if you don't remember all the stories of Dune. If you know tarot, I think it will work for you if you're interested and want it to work. So there you go. That's my walkthrough. I'm a huge fan. I think it's really great, and it was really fun to find these pairings. I haven't actually paired a lot very successfully with my Egyptian sacred animals, so that's kind of fun. I pair a lot with Coastal Curiosities, and then I'm brand new. This is like the first deck I've worked with that matched my Arcana of astrology. All right, again, thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed this walkthrough. I look forward to seeing you in another video, and have a great night.